Welcome to another edition of the Off the Glass Basketball Podcast. Harris Wishard here with Nick Fay, a free agent edition of Off the Glass, July 3rd, 2015, a Friday night on the eve of July 4th, Independence Day, and the NBA is abuzz, Nick, because there's just so many different things going on. Tough to keep track of it all. How have you been able to keep track of it? I know your mind's everywhere. You love this time of year. So many things going on at once. First off, how are you? Second off, what are your initial thoughts of some of these moves and free agency?
I'm doing great, Harris. Like you know, this is one of my favorite times of the year. And the great place to keep track of all the free agents is OTGbasketball.com. We have updates all the time in the recent free agent signings, so keep an eye out. And I'm excited for this edition of the show.
Tweet us at OTGbasketball. And like Nick said, OTGbasketball.com. And, you know, I go on ESPN, I go on NBA.com, and know that OTG is an up-and-coming website. There's been some great, and I like to shout out the writers, there's been some really, really good coverage of a very busy time, and there's a lot going on. And if you're a writer, if you cover for the website, kudos, because a lot is going on to discuss. And let's start off with guys that have stayed with their team. We're going to go back and forth between some of our, favorite signings. I know you're a big Net fan. You could talk a little bit about that. But let's talk about a couple guys, especially from the championship teams we just witnessed late in June in the Warriors and the Cavaliers. Kevin Love and Tristan Thompson staying put.
Yeah, the Cavs had a busy free agency the first 2 days. They re-signed Kevin Love. They re-signed Tristan Thompson. They re-signed Amon Shumpert, and they spent a ton of money. So I think the Cavs are lining themselves up to have another great season. A lot of us expect them to repeat and go back to the championship. Maybe this time are capable of winning if health is on their side. So I think the owner really made a statement saying he's willing to spend money just to get that championship for Cleveland.
What did LeBron opting out have anything to do with their offseason plans? I think everybody understood that he wasn't going anywhere. But do you think that him opting out was maybe a sign for – it's a free agent to the Cavs ownership and their front office to say, hey, listen, we got to lock some of these guys up? Or what do you think that message was being sent there?
I think it just gives LeBron a little bit of leverage, and maybe just an example in a case, maybe he would take a pay cut, but it doesn't look that way. So I think it just probably to give LeBron some leverage, and like you said, it gives him a little power to sign back the guys he wants. I know he is really active with the GM and trying to get the guys back that he feels plays well with the team.
Well, Kevin Love's interesting because at times this year it looked like almost like he couldn't sit at the pool table at lunch. I mean, it was he was on the outside looking in. It seemed like Kyrie and LeBron and some of the other players on the team had chemistry. What does Love have to figure out to fit into this piece? Because if Love is able to, what I like to call, make an adjustment, make a sacrifice, in the grand scheme of things, this team could be dangerous for a long time.
Yeah, I think a little bit has to be on Love's side and a little bit has to be on the Cavs side. I think they didn't utilize him that well last season. He can definitely do more than just be a spot-up shooter. I think they should try to get him involved a little bit more. And I think it was a big deal that LeBron went out and visited him and had that meeting after he said that he wasn't going to recruit Kevin Love. I think that meeting had a big impact on him and, like you said, made him feel like he was part of the gang.
And I think – sorry to cut you off, I think that what LeBron witnessed in the finals and having to rely so heavily on lesser players. Like if the Cavs went out and won the finals, I think there'd be a little different relationship here. I think LeBron realized that, man, this guy is a really good scorer. There's some use for him here. Obviously, Tristan Thompson proved himself in the finals, but there's a tremendous amount of use for Kevin Love, especially like you say, to talk about stretch the floor and keep defenses honest.
Exactly. Like you said, keep defenses on and stretch the floor. I think LeBron understands that. It makes his life easier if there's another scorer on the floor, and he can rely on someone else who can put points up and not necessarily tire himself out and save some for the fourth quarter, which was a problem in the finals. So I think LeBron understood that Kevin Love could be a big part of this team and really help them win a championship.
Now, you know the numbers better than me. Now we'll shift gears over to the Warriors. What does this allow? Does this put the Warriors in a little bit of a pickle? Does it put the Warriors in a financial? Does it restrict them a little bit financially when you give a guy like Draymond Green the money they gave him, and you know the contract better than me? It was a 5 years, $95 million, so close to maximum money. Is that the type of money you think he deserves, and would it put the Warriors in a tougher spot going forward?
Well, I think, like you said, the Warriors were in a tough spot as it was. They needed to keep Draymond Green. He signed a 5-year deal for $85 million. I think if the Warriors didn't pay him, another team was definitely going to sign him to an offer sheet. Detroit was really involved in that aspect. He's from Detroit, and it's been mentioned all season that they'd like to sign him. So I think the Warriors just had to go out there and get him, and maybe it puts him over the cap a little bit more than they would like. But they're most likely going to move David Lee before the season starts. He's been a lot of teams have had some interest in him, like the Knicks and the Lakers. So I think it works out. And like mentioned a million times over the last 2 days, is the cap is going to go up. So I don't think his contract's going to be as big a deal when the cap goes up. And he's a great player.
And for those who don't know, what are the situations between the Splash Brothers and what the Warriors will have to do, like Curry under contract and Thompson under contract? When will those situations have to be addressed? I think they just locked up Thompson. Curry might be a little bit of a different story, but as far as the Splash Brothers, what is their financial situation?
Well, they're both on. Clay's on. He just, like you said, mentioned. I think he signed an extension a year or two ago, so he's set up for a while. Curry's on a great contract right now. That's one of the reasons the Warriors have such a great team, is because they were able to sign Curry when his ankles were sort of still an issue, so they have him at a great price. So I want to say he's probably under contract for a year or two more, so they'll have to re-up on him soon, but by then the cap will be up, so it should benefit the Warriors.
Right, like you said, got him at a great time. So the Warriors and Cavs, the two teams in the finals last year, are active in free agency. Now, another player that is now back with his team that he had been on, and I know there's a lot have been talked about this specific player, and Jimmy Butler signed a major deal as well with Chicago.
Yeah, that was definitely a big deal. It seemed that Butler maybe was interested in joining another team. There's been some talk about him and Derrick Rose having some issues in the past, that Jimmy Butler really wants to be the alpha dog. And with Derrick Rose there, it's really his team. So that was kind of an issue. So it was nice to see the Bulls able to lock up Butler for long term. And at the end of the day, it was going to be tough to get him away from the Bulls just because he was a restricted free agent, so they could match any offer that he received.
Right, and a guy that to me is a great fit there. He's defense first. He's made a lot of strides offensively. This is a guy that's continuously improved, and I have a lot of respect for guys that get in the league and they're continuously improving every year in the league. And you could see this guy, I think the sky's the limit for him. As soon as his jump shot continues to improve, he works on his offensive skill. He's one of those few guys in the league that is not afraid of LeBron James and will go at him. So this is a great look for Chicago.
Definitely.
Now that the Thibodeau era is over in Chicago, and then you would be able to tell me off the top of your head who's now the coach there. But I think Butler, with that being that tough-nosed wing perimeter defender, is an all-star in this league for years to come, I would think.
Like you said, you can't not love a guy who comes in the league, knows he has some issues in his game, and he fixes them. He came in the league as just a defender. He could just defend. He didn't really have much of an offensive game. The last year, he really took his game to another level, averaging around 20 points a game. And he can keep getting better. Like you said, he's a workhorse, so he's going to work on his game. Like mentioned, he probably could work on his mid-range game a little bit, add a floater, get a little better three-point shot, and he'll be a really complete player and an all-star for Chicago for years to come.
And Fred Hoiberg, by the way, is the new coach of the Bulls. Came over from the college game, the former Iowa State coach. But I think this is going to be a little bit of that Mark Jackson to Kerr situation. I'm not going to say Hoiberg's going to be as successful as Kerr, but I think they needed a new voice in that locker room. And I think the systems they played sometimes, Thibodeau was a little bit of a hard nose and rode these guys a little bit too much. It just reminds me, I draw parallels to the Warriors situation, now the Bulls situation, that they'll have a new voice in there. And I think if obviously Rose healthy, they brought Dunleavy back, another guy that signed an extension. I like him. I think he's an underrated player in the league.
Great price on Dunleavy. They got a great price.
Right. So he 3 years, $14 million, something of that.
Yeah.
Nature. So he's coming back. So I don't know. I think this Bulls team is going to be really tough. I think as long as Gasol and Rose are playing to their potential, and now Butler back, Dunleavy back, I don't know if they'll have Aaron Brooks off the bench again as another offensive threat. Joakim Noah will be back as well. So this Bulls team will again challenge the Cavs. This year they had them where they wanted them. I think this year, look out for Chicago, new coach, new energy, bringing back a couple players. There's going to be motivation in Chicago.
Yeah, there definitely is, and like you said, they get new energy, new style. They just got to buy into it. And maybe if health falls in their favor, they might be able to beat the Cavs in the in the playoffs just because, Paul Gasol was injured and he was having a big series, and that really hurt them. And I just wanted to leak out some breaking news. It looks like I'm getting this from Real GM that Patrick Beverley agrees to re-sign with the Rockets on a 4-year deal for $25 million.
Wow, and so they get Beverly and they also get, what's his name?
Brewer
back, right. So Corey Brewer, the wing, and Beverly. So interesting news that you just broke that Patrick Beverley is now re-signing with the Rockets, and you have to like what they've done this offseason. But moving on to we'll get to them in a little bit, moving to a Eastern Conference team that has made some noise in the offseason, and you know where I'm going with this, the Milwaukee Bucks. And we both like this team, and now I'm not sold on them being a championship contender, but they re-signed Middleton, who's an up-and-coming player, and then the big Greg Monroe splash, who without playing with Andre Drummond, I think is going to be effective in Milwaukee.
Yeah, I'm pretty actually excited for the Greg Monroe signing. I thought it kind of surprised everyone a little bit. Milwaukee was mentioned in the rumors, but no one really thought he would sign there. He'd go with maybe one of the bigger teams like New York or LA. But in Milwaukee, he'll fit in great. There's a ton of other young players like the Greek Freak, Chris Middleton, like you mentioned, re-signed. They got Michael Carter-Williams, some nice pieces off the bench. So I think Monroe's a great piece for them because where the Bucks struggled last season was the half court, and they struggled rebounding as well. And Greg Monroe is a great scorer in the half court. He has a great post game. He can get buckets for you, and he's a great rebounder. Two areas where the Bucks really needed to improve, and they did. I'm not ready to call them a championship team, but I think they're a team on the rise that's going to continually get better.
Well, what it's going to allow them to do is learn, and they're going to be in the postseason again. And, by the time September and October comes around, we'll obviously have some of our predictions. We're not going to say any of that now, but I think it's obvious to say both of us will have Milwaukee slotted into probably somewhere between that 5 and 7 range. I don't know if they're a top 14 yet, but they're gonna be on the brink of that realm because now they have some other options, and it's going to allow guys like the Greek Freak to fall back a little bit, not to put so much pressure on a Michael Carter-Williams, who will have more options and more players around him. So the thing to me about Monroe and Middleton, these guys are still young. I mean, Monroe's 24, Middleton's on the younger, is a little bit inexperienced in the playoffs, and also the Greek Freak we know is young. So these guys still aren't knockdown shooters. They're not.
And Jabari Parker.
Obviously, we didn't even talk about their second pick of the draft last year who got hurt. Probably would have been a Rookie of the Year candidate. So they have some young pieces. I think getting eliminated a couple times in the playoffs, this team, and then I'd say the next 3 or 5 years has an opportunity to be a true threat in the Eastern Conference.
Yeah, definitely. And I think Jason Kidd, even though he's only coached for 2 years, has done a great job with young talent. Even when he was on the Nets, he did a good job getting Mason Plumlee ready. So I think he can help the Bucks players really take it to the next level. So, like you mentioned.
Did you just say a positive thing about your boy Jason Kidd?
I think he's a great coach. I'm just not necessarily okay with his morals, maybe.
Right. But so big news also out of Miami. Talk about maybe the Dwayne Wade deal. That's going to be 1 year, $20 million. Am I correct?
You are correct. Yep, that deal. Heat fans were pretty nervous for a while there. It looked like Wade possibly could sign somewhere else, but Pat Riley did his thing, and he got Wade to sign for a 1 year, $20 million contract, which really helps the Heat because there's going to be a ton of great free agents next season. So Wade will be coming off that contract. Maybe next year they can convince him to take some sort of a pay cut. So it could end up working out pretty well for the Heat. And the Heat have been mentioned in the LaMarcus Aldridge sweepstakes, so keep an eye on them.
Will also be back. He signed for what I think a little bit more than what people expected.
Yes, he did. Goran Dragic signed for 5 years, $90 million. I mean, he got his big contract. I think if he didn't sign it with the Heat, though, someone else was going to offer it. Two teams that were interested in him prior were the Knicks and the Lakers, so we know they're willing to throw money around.
Right. So with now Miami bringing back Wade, bringing back Goran Dragic, they got a steal in the draft. A lot of people think at 10 and Justice Winslow. Is Chris Bosh going to be healthy enough for this team to be taken seriously next year?
I think Chris Bosh has to be healthy. He looked good at the end of last season. I think he was starting to get back in his groove around a little bit. I don't think that's really a reoccurring issue, the blood clots in your lungs. So I think he should be fine if they stay healthy. I think more of the issue is Wade staying healthy. But next year, Dragic, Wade, Dang took his option, and Chris Bosh and Whiteside. And Whiteside's only going to get better. And then Justice Winslow off the bench, and maybe they might move Chalmers or McRoberts. I'm not sure. So I think that he will be a playoff team for sure. Health will really determine if they'll be a big-time playoff team or just a first-round knockout.
Let's talk about a dynamic duo that will no longer be one down over in Portland. Damian Lillard signs the extension. Now we're still waiting to find out officially where Aldridge will go, but we expect him to leave Portland.
Yeah, definitely. I think I mean, there's been rumors that saying he did tell Portland he was going to leave, and then Portland said that he didn't tell him they're going to leave. So I think they're a long shot to get him, but there's still possibly a chance. But it looks like Portland went from being a top team in the West to possibly not making the playoffs at all last year. What team loses four of their five starters? Last year they went with Damian Lillard, Wes Matthews, Nick Batum, LaMarcus Aldridge, Robin Lopez, and now this year they only have Damian Lillard left.
Right. Yeah, we'll get into the Knicks. I want to save 5 to 7 minutes towards the end of our program. Again, you're listening to the Off the Glass Basketball Podcast, free agency edition. Tweet us all your questions and comments at OTG Basketball. I want to talk about the Knicks towards the end. You mentioned Robin Lopez, but let's talk about Wesley Matthews headed to Dallas along with DeAndre Jordan from the Clippers. We know that they lost a few players too in Dallas, in Monta Ellis and Tyson Chandler. So let's just talk about this scramble that's going out west now. Tyson Chandler to Phoenix, Monta Ellis to Indiana, DeAndre Jordan and Wesley Matthews. I'm sorry, DeAndre Jordan and Wesley Matthews both to Dallas.
Exactly. Well, let me just touch on one thing before we start. More breaking news. Rajon Rondo agrees to sign a 1-year deal for $10 million with the Kings. We'll touch on that later.
Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah, so we'll put that out there. We'll talk about it a little bit later. But like you said, there's been a huge huffle. Dallas lost Tyson Chandler. I thought what was one of the more surprising signings was the Suns picked up Tyson Chandler. I thought he was probably going to go to maybe the Bucks because he had ties to a Jason Kidd, but that kind of surprised me. And like you mentioned, they just picked up DeAndre Jordan and Wes Matthews, so kind of retooled their team and got themselves ready. And I think that DeAndre Jordan is going to have a chance to maybe showcase a little bit more of his skills. I guess Mark Cuban and Chandler Parsons really did a great job recruiting players.
Well, they're just bringing in a more athletic Tyson Chandler. I mean, Tyson Chandler has done a lot of what DeAndre Jordan has done. This is a very popular, I don't say very popular, but it's a valuable player in the NBA today. I mean, Tyson shoots the free throw a little bit better, but DeAndre will probably have more impact on the game.
Defensively, he's huge.
Right. Defensively, he's huge right now, and he's going to be around the basket, and it's going to make who's going to be the starting point guard out in Dallas now?
We're not really sure at this point right now. It looks like they might try to make a move for someone. J.J. Barea might re-sign, and Devin Harris possibly could start. It's really unknown who they're going to start. They're going to try to pick someone up. But
with Wesley Matthews now and Dirk Nowitzki and DeAndre Jordan and Chandler Parsons still going to be – Chandler Parsons will come back.
Yeah.
This is going to be an interesting team again.
I think the one issue that they have to worry about is just Wes Matthews' Achilles, because it's known that players don't really return from Achilles injuries that great, so that could be an issue. And if they're able to land just like a solid point guard, not anything even ridiculous, just a veteran possibly, I think that'd be great. Maybe someone they've even had like Jameer Nelson to just solidify what they have or try to make a trade for somebody would really help this team. But even just the 4 out of the 5 starters are well-known players, and I think Wes Matthews and DeAndre Jordan are going to make them improve dramatically defensively if healthy.
Can you remember I know 2010 was a crazy free agent period, but to me, I don't remember so many people switching to. I mean, this is unbelievable. There's somebody switching a team 5, 6 guys leaving every day now. This is intense, and it's early, and it's nothing like the decision that we saw in 2010. We saw some stuff go on last year, but this to me has escalated to a whole new level.
I think this has definitely become one of the favorite times of the year for NBA fans. And like you said, it's just been crazy. So much player movement. I always tell my friends, like, the NBA free agency is better than everything else. There's just so many players who switch from big-time teams to other big-time teams. And one thing different from this year, a lot of the time in like these first few days, we don't necessarily see a lot of agreements. We see a lot more meetings. But on the first day, we saw a lot of players re-sign and a lot of players try to reach out to other teams like they knew what they were doing prior to the period even starting.
Let's touch on another couple of signings that are impactful. And Paul Pierce to the Clippers, what do you think that does? One question I'll ask you, what do you think that does for the locker room in LA? And now that DeAndre Jordan's out, so we look at the Clippers situation, no Jordan, Paul Pierce comes in to try to play that veteran role and try to take that team over the top, and then DeMaury Carroll leaves the Hawks to go to a up-and-coming young Raptors team.
I'll touch on the Clippers first. I think DeAndre Jordan leaving is a big problem. They need to try to find a center, or they're going to have to play a lot of small ball. I'll say this about Paul Pierce. If Pierce was probably on that team last year, they don't blow the series against the Rockets, and they probably advance. Mm-hmm. So I think his leadership is probably going to have a big impact on the team, kind of giving that like killer instinct that they lacked at times last year. I don't necessarily think Pierce is going to put a ton of work in during the regular season. But come playoff time, he may be able to help them, give them some big-time buckets. But they're going to need to find somebody to replace DeAndre Jordan. They've been tied with Costa Kufis, possibly with a sign and trade with Memphis, possibly. Amari Stoudemire has been mentioned around there. One person that I think would be a possibility would be Roy Hibbert. But the thing is, the Clippers are not in a great cap situation, so they need to move maybe possibly Jamal Crawford or someone along those lines.
For the last about 10 minutes or so, again, off the glass basketball, we are recapping an amazing, incredible, exciting free agent period. Let's talk about the Sacramento Kings team now for a second, because there's been obviously breaking news. If you didn't hear before, Rajon Rondo, the former All-Star point guard, has now signed a 1-year, $10 million contract with the Sacramento Kings, making him probably now the relationship between him and George Karl will be very interesting. We don't even know if George Karl is going to coach this team. We've heard all types of rumors about DeMarcus Cousins and his attitude. Bellinelli signs with the Kings. This thing is, I know you know some Kings fans, so this thing is pretty exciting right now. But how's this all going to work out? I mean, you know, Rondo's attitude, Cousins' attitude, how Karl likes to coach. Could they put this thing together? Because if they can, you could see the old Rondo come out of nowhere, because I think he's one of those guys where you never know what you can get from him at times. You pair him with the best center in basketball. Now you get a shooter who's won a championship in Bellinelli. What's going on in Sacramento?
I mean, I think it could be a good signing for the Kings, but some Kings fans have mentioned to me that they probably prefer Darren Collison over Rajon Rondo. The problem is you don't really know what you're getting with Rondo, because he could be Rondo from Boston and get you triple-doubles all the time, or it could be Rondo from Dallas and just kind of be someone who complains he doesn't get his way and just doesn't play hard. So that was the issue in Dallas. I think a big thing for the Kings to be successful is they're going to have to manage all of these egos and attitudes or whatnot, from the coach to Cousins to Rondo. I mean, Gay and Cousins both recruited Rondo, so there has to be some liking along those lines.
This is where I disagree with some of those Kings fans, and I'll say this. How old is Rajon Rondo?
Getting close to 30, I would say. I'll give you.
He's still got a couple years left to be, if he's healthy, to be athletic, right?
Yeah. He's 29.
So my point is this. Dallas already had something in place to win, right? That was a winning organization. When Rondo transformed the Celtics, and it wasn't just Rondo. Obviously, we know Ray Allen. We know about Garnett. We know about Pierce. Rondo was, pretty much a puppet, but he had some big games and played really well in the playoffs. I think this is going to work. I think Rondo's going to come in with a guy like Cousins, and he gets up and down a little bit. The Kings do play fast. They got some athletes. And I think Rondo, turning a bad situation to a good one, knows his career and reputation's on the line, knows that if he has that kind of Iverson attitude that, he's probably doesn't trust anybody type of thing. We know how many times he went at Garnett. I think if this could fall into place, the Kings could rise quickly, because now you do have Collison who can play the two. Collison can shoot, can play off the ball. And you could play a two-guard offense. McLemore's athletic, Bellinelli on the wing, Cousins, and we've watched. I don't know if Rudy Gay's still going to be there. Is he going to be there?
Yeah, Rudy Gay will still be under contract. He actually had a big part in recruiting a lot of these free agents, from what I heard.
This is a team that's going to me, have an opportunity to sneak in the playoffs, if not be right in that 9-10 area. And again, Cousins, to me, one of those guys that could carry our team. He was banged up at the beginning of last year. We knew what he was going through. But I think the Kings are going to be for real next year.
I could see it as a possibility. It just depends on what happens with all the egos and attitudes. I could see Rondo bouncing back and playing with some scorers. I think Omar Caspi, if they bring him back, I think that would be nice for the team.
A FanDuel favorite.
Yeah, FanDuel favorite, especially at the end of last season under Karl. I would maybe, if since they picked up Rondo, maybe the Kings should play a little bit more small ball. Rondo, Gay's a big player. He's a big small forward. He possibly could spend some minutes at the 4, especially the way we see the NBA going forward. So I think that would be interesting. They need to surround him by shooters, because we know Rondo's not a great shooter himself. He's the best when the floor is spaced and he can get into the paint and create for others.
Right. So let's go these last 5. We're going to 7:39. Let's spend these last few minutes on the local teams and the Knicks and the Nets. Today, the Knicks announced that Robin Lopez will be signed to 4 years and $54 million. And then yesterday, they announced that Aaron Aflalo will be signed to 2 years and $16 million, I want to say.
I can find that out for you. Just one
Right.
second.
Yeah, but what what did you think when you heard Robin Lopez and that contract, and now Aflalo? Sorry, yes, 2 years, 16 confirmed.
Yep.
So the last two contracts, and Nick Sen, and then obviously we know we talked a lot about Porzingis. We think Aflalo had a lot to do maybe with Melo, but this Robin Lopez signing, it does give you a body in the paint, which what they needed in this market. Maybe slightly overpaid. We don't know yet. But what do you think? Where do you think he fits in the grand scheme of things? And he does know how to play off some scoring forwards like an Aldridge. He's played off some Melo and Lopez. And how do you think the Knicks go forward from here?
Well, first, I just want to touch on how excited I am that Robin and Brooke are both in New York. I think that's pretty funny. They should probably have their own reality TV show. They're just two characters, and they're if you know them, you know that they're funny guys. So it'll be interesting for New York. They'll probably be around everywhere. So, but onto the basketball court, I think Robin was a nice pickup. Like I mentioned, that the cap's going to go up, so I don't think his salary is that big of an issue. He's a good. I wouldn't say like role players because he's a starter. I think he can definitely be a starter. He gives you defense, rebounding. He's a decent passer. He gives you energy. He plays hard. So I think that's a nice signing. I don't think anything bad about Robin. I think he's a good complementary player. He's not going to go out there and be Brooke and get you 20 points a night, but he's going to rebound, defend, and bring you energy.
Right, and just a couple weeks ago, as a Knick fan, and if you're a Knick fan in New York, you have no idea. And now you kind of maybe have a slight idea. I mean, maybe you put Grant at the 1, or if you start Calderon, now you could put Aflalo at the 2. Who's the 3? I don't know if they want to put Melo at the 3 or play Melo at the 4. But now you have Porzingis to throw in the mix if he's ready to play in the rotation. Obviously, Robin Lopez. So now you have an idea of what the roster might start looking like as they try to fill in the holes right now.
Yeah, well, someone I'm not sure quite who it was on Twitter. They brought up a good point, and they mentioned that the Knicks, they understood that they couldn't get a superstar, so they went and got some other role players. Maybe they'll be a competitive team, and they'll be able to attract a superstar. Like you see, the big time players this year, they really didn't try to go to teams that were bad lottery teams. They went to teams that are already kind of like almost there, so they could just be that final factor that brought them to the next level. I think the Knicks are starting to understand that. Aflalo didn't play well at on Portland last year. A lot of people mentioned he was injured, so he'll probably try to look back to bounce back his game. But if healthy, he's a pretty good scorer, and he provides you with some defense. And like you mentioned, who's going to play the 3 or 4 depending on where Melo plays. They have had a lot of interest in Derek Williams. Could be someone they could possibly sign and maybe start, an athletic kind of tweener. So it'll be
happy to see in this NBA offseason. A lot of guys seem to be more concerned about winning than the money. Am I wrong on that?
Exactly. I think I love it. I love the fact that the players are actually interested in winning, and they just don't want to sign with these big market teams and make money. Because if that was the case, LaMarcus Aldridge would probably be going to LA or New York to get that big market and take advantage of endorsements. But instead, he's looking at San Antonio, or maybe someone like Danny Green, who definitely probably could have got a $15 million a year contract with some of the contracts these guys are signing, and he took a pay cut to stay with this Spurs. I think something around 10 or 11 million a year.
Look at the last 4 teams to win titles in this league. The Warriors, we know their sacrifice. The Spurs, we know how they run their organization. The Heat, and we knew the pay cuts that some of those guys took. So if you really want to win in this league, you're not going to go sign a max deal with a lesser franchise.
Exactly. You're going to try to go out there and win. And that's what I like to see from the players. I mean, it kind of tells you a little bit about the player as well, that they're competitive and they care about their reputation and they want to go out there and play hard every night.
Right, so now let's wrap up with a couple minutes of Nets talk. Brooke Lopez is back. Thaddeus Young looks to be coming back. What else do the Nets have to do this offseason?
Well, they signed their 2 big guys right there. I think that was the most important thing from them. They're looking to move Darren Williams and Joe Johnson. But before I touch on that, they signed Shane Larkin and Thomas Robinson. Robinson was
Plumlee is gone,
and Plumlee was traded for Ron Hollis Jefferson. So I think they kind of understood. They knew that they were going to kind of get Brooke Lopez back. They had that feeling. They were confident all along. So that's why they're okay trading Plumlee. They understood that they both can't play together, so they take advantage of that a little bit. And they signed Shane Larkin and Thomas Robinson. Robinson's somebody that they really had interest in. They were actually going to sign him to a 10-day contract before the Sixers swooped in and claimed him off waivers. So I think that they're pretty happy they picked him up. He has something to prove. Larkin might have something to prove. He's a quick point guard, something they were looking for. But the rest of the offseason, they're just going to look to trade Joe Johnson or Darren Williams. Joe Johnson has got some interest from the Grizzlies. It's going to be tough to trade his $24 million contract, and the same with Darren Williams for $21 million. The only team that I really saw possibly having interest in Darren Williams was probably the Kings. They had interest in him last year, and they were looking to make a splash. But with this Rondo signing, it probably squashes that.
And the last question I'll ask you before we go, Kings, Mavericks, Bucks, Cavs. Out of those four, which two of those teams do you have had the best offseason so far?
I think I'm going to probably just stick with the Cavs just because they re-signed their guys, they got their team intact, and they have the best team out of the bunch. So that's probably the most important thing.
Right. And
I think, what would you say out of those four?
I really like what the Kings have done. I think that anytime you have a franchise that has been surrounded by so many toxic players and environment, I know I'm not a big Rondo fan, but he's a winner. He's been on a winning team, and Bellinelli is a winner, been on a winning team. So to bring some of that championship pedigree in that mix, and I think you could see that team rise a little bit. I think they'll be improved by 15, 20 wins. And Milwaukee's had a good offseason so far. I like what they do in Monroe. But I agree with you. Bringing back Love for the Cavs and having Thompson get that experience without Love, they're going to be dangerous again. But we'll be back, and we're going to do another show in July. I would hope so, and and recap the free agency and look forward to a NBA Summer League offseason, and then obviously training camp that'll get started in September. But unbelievable excitement that's building up to this 15-16 campaign.
Yeah, a lot of excitement because a lot of unknown. You don't know how these players are going to adapt with their new teams, how the teams are going to adapt missing players. So it should be a great season and really interesting. And like you said, we'll be back on to recap this. And I just want to thank everybody for listening. Thank the writers for the hard work they put in. The free agency profiles on the site are great.
Right.
And come to OTG Basketball if you want to know the most current signings. We're updating every hour.
OTGbasketball.com, on Twitter at OTG Basketball. And Nick, it's always a pleasure. But we will be joined again next Friday at 7. We'll keep this slot going forward to keep the consistency, and we hope to be joined by one of our writers next Friday to recap what's been going on. But again, OTGbasketball.com. We want everybody to be safe and enjoy their family and friends over the Independence Day weekend. And we'll be back on next Friday. Thank you for listening, and we appreciate all the support.
Great show, Harris. Thank you guys for listening, and happy 4th of July.